Have you ever wondered why some people seem to get richer just by spending money? Like you buy a laptop and it's just gone $2,000 down the drain, but they buy a laptop and somehow it turns into more money. What is that about? Here's what nobody tells you. The difference isn't about how much money they have, it's about how they think about money before they even open their wallet. Here at Simple Money, we've analyzed hundreds of financial decisions made by wealthy individuals. And I'm going to reveal something that might completely change how you look at every purchase you make. Because here's the thing, rich people aren't actually turning expenses into investments. That's not what's happening at all. They're doing something way more interesting. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Here's what's really happening in most people's financial lives. You need something. Your phone breaks. Your car needs repairs. Your kid needs school supplies. So you buy it. The money leaves your account. And that's the end of the story. The thing you bought either depreciates in value or gets used up completely. Your bank account is smaller. Your net worth hasn't changed. You're essentially treading water financially. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Wealthy people face the exact same situations. They need phones, their cars break down, their kids need stuff. But somehow, when the dust settles, they end up in a better financial position than when they started. Not just the same, better. And here's the part that drives people crazy. It's not because they're buying different things. It's not because they have access to special rich people stores. It's because they've completely reframed what a purchase actually is. Think about it this way. When you look at a tree, you see a tree. When a carpenter looks at that same tree, they see a table, a chair, maybe a bookshelf. Same tree, different lens. That's what's happening here, and I'm about to show you exactly how this lens works. The first thing wealthy people do is something I call the productivity multiplier. Here's how most people think about buying stuff. They ask themselves, do I need this? Can I afford this? Is this a good deal? Those are fine questions, but they're missing something crucial. Wealthy people ask a completely different question. They ask, what will this allow me to do that I couldn't do before? Let me give you a specific example. Say you're thinking about buying a $1,500 camera. Most people calculate whether they can afford $1,500. They look at their bank account, they feel guilty, maybe they buy it, maybe they don't. But here's what a wealthy person does. They ask, if I have this camera, can I create content that generates income? Can I document my business in a way that attracts customers? Can I learn a skill that increases my earning potential? Now, here's the crucial part. They're not justifying a purchase they want to make anyway. They're actually running a mental calculation. If this camera lets me create one freelance project per month at $500, it pays for itself in 3 months. After that, it's pure profit for the next 5 years. Suddenly, that $1,500 expense isn't an expense at all. It's a tool that generates $29,000 over 5 years. Same camera, different framework. And here's what makes this so powerful. Once you start thinking this way, you naturally stop buying things that don't multiply your productivity. That designer handbag doesn't help you make more money. That fancy dinner doesn't increase your skills or income. But that online course that teaches you a high income skill, that's not an expense. That's purchasing future income. The psychology behind this is fascinating. Our brains are wired to feel pain when money leaves our account. It's called loss aversion. But wealthy people have trained themselves to feel excitement instead, because they're not losing money, they're deploying capital. The second thing they do is what I call the network effect purchase. This one is sneaky, and most people completely miss it. Here's what's happening. Average people buy things for the utility of the thing itself. You buy a gym membership to work out. You buy concert tickets to hear music. Wealthy people buy things for the proximity they create. Let me explain. Say you're deciding whether to attend a $3,000 business conference. Most people think, that's expensive. What if the information isn't that valuable? What if I don't get my money's worth? But wealthy people are thinking about something entirely different. They're thinking, who else will be at this conference? What conversations might happen at lunch? Who might I meet at the hotel bar? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. That random conversation with someone at a conference might lead to a business partnership worth $200,000. That person you sit next to at the expensive fundraiser dinner might introduce you to your next investor. You're not buying a conference ticket, you're buying access to a room full of people who can change your financial trajectory. Now, this isn't about networking in the gross transactional sense. It's not about collecting business cards. It's about understanding that wealthy people cluster together, and proximity to them changes what opportunities become visible to you. Think about it this way. If you want to learn to surf, you move to a beach town. If you want to work in film, you move to Los Angeles. Same principle. You're purchasing proximity to the thing you want to become. Here's a concrete example. Let's say you're a freelance designer trying to land bigger clients. You could spend $3,000 on Facebook ads. That's money out, hoping for money in. Or you could spend $3,000 joining a co-working space where successful entrepreneurs work. You see them every day. You have coffee with them. They see your work. They trust you because you're part of their environment. Which one do you think leads to better clients? The first is an expense. The second is purchasing access to a different tier of opportunity. And here's what makes this particularly powerful. The returns aren't immediate or obvious. That's why most people never figure this out. You might spend a year in that co-working space before landing your first big client from it. But when you do, it changes everything. The third principle is something I call the skill stacking purchase. This is where things get really interesting. Most people buy things that solve immediate problems. Your phone breaks, you buy a new phone, your problem is solved, done. Wealthy people buy things that create new capabilities. Here's the difference. Let's say you need to create graphics for your business. Average approach, pay someone $50 every time you need a graphic. It's an expense. Every single time. Wealthy approach, spend $200 on a Canva Pro subscription and 40 hours learning design. Now you have a new skill forever. Same immediate need, completely different 5-year outcome. But here's where this gets powerful. They're not just learning random skills, they're strategically stacking skills that multiply each other. Think about this. Say you learn basic video editing, useful skill, worth maybe an extra $5,000 per year in freelance income. Now you learn basic copywriting, also useful, worth another $5,000 per year. But here's the magic. When you combine video editing and copywriting, you can create compelling video ads. That's not worth $10,000 per year. That's worth $50,000 or more. The skills multiply each other. This is why you see wealthy people constantly investing in education, courses, coaching, and tools. They're not spending money. They're accumulating capabilities. And here's the uncomfortable part. This requires thinking 5 years ahead. When you buy a $2,000 course on financial modeling, you won't use it tomorrow. Maybe not next month, but 2 years from now, when you're negotiating a raise or evaluating a business opportunity, that skill completely changes your position. Most people can't think that far ahead. They need the money now. They see education as an expense they can't afford. Wealthy people see it as the only expense they can't afford to skip. The psychology here is about delayed gratification, but it's deeper than that. It's about recognizing that your skills are the only asset that can't be taken away from you. Markets crash, jobs disappear, businesses fail, but if you've stacked 5 valuable skills, you're anti-fragile. You have options. The fourth principle is what I call the leverage purchase. This one is probably the most misunderstood concept in all of personal finance. Here's what most people do. They trade their time directly for money. Work an hour, get paid for an hour. So when they spend money, they're thinking about how many hours of work that represents. That $200 dinner is 5 hours of work. That vacation is 80 hours of work. Wealthy people think about purchases completely differently. They ask, does this purchase give me leverage? Does it multiply my time? Does it remove bottlenecks? Let me give you a really specific example. Say you're a consultant billing $200 per hour. You spend 10 hours per week on administrative tasks, scheduling, invoicing, email management. That's $2,000 per week of your time going to admin work. That's $8,000 per month. Now, you could hire a virtual assistant for $1,500 per month to handle all of that. Most people see that as an expense. $1,500 per month, that's a lot of money. But here's what wealthy people see. They see buying back 10 hours per week. That's 40 hours per month. At $200 per hour, that's $8,000 of billable time they just purchased for $1,500. They didn't spend $1,500, they made $6,500. Same transaction, completely different frame. And here's where this gets really powerful. That freed up time doesn't just generate more income, it creates space for strategic thinking. When you're drowning in admin work, you can't think about growing your business. You can't develop new offerings. You can't build relationships. But when you buy back your time, you can focus on the activities that actually compound. The psychology behind this is fascinating. We have a really hard time valuing our own time accurately. We'll spend 2 hours driving across town to save $10 on something. We'll waste 3 hours fighting with our printer instead of paying someone $50 to fix it. But when you do the math, you're paying yourself below minimum wage to do tasks you hate. Wealthy people understand their time has a price, and they ruthlessly eliminate any activity that's below that price. Here's another example. Let's say you own a small business. You spend 5 hours per week creating social media content. You could learn to do it better. Watch more YouTube videos, read more articles, spend another 5 hours per week improving. Or you could pay someone $300 per week to handle it. Someone who's already an expert, who can do in 2 hours what takes you 5. Most people see that $300 as an expense. Wealthy people see it as purchasing expertise and time. They didn't lose $300. They gained 3 hours per week and better results. The fifth and final principle is something I call the optionality purchase. This is the most advanced concept, and it's probably the most powerful. Here's what's happening. Most people buy things that solve the problem in front of them right now. They're reactive. Wealthy people buy things that create options they might need in the future. They're proactive. Let me explain what I mean. Say you're thinking about buying a commercial property, not to use right now, just to own. Most people think, why would I buy something I'm not going to use? That's just money sitting there. That's wasteful. But here's what wealthy people see. In 3 years, they might want to start a new business. Having that property means they can launch immediately without searching for space, negotiating leases, or dealing with landlords. In 5 years, the area might develop and the property doubles in value. In 7 years, they might need to relocate their existing business and have a ready-made solution. They're not buying a property, they're buying future flexibility. The same applies to smaller decisions. Why do wealthy people keep multiple bank accounts at different institutions? Not because they need them now. Because if one bank freezes their account, they have options. Why do they maintain relationships with multiple vendors? Not because they use all of them, because if one falls through, they're not scrambling. Why do they learn skills they're not using? Because when opportunity appears, they can move fast. Here's a concrete example. Let's say you're a software developer. You could specialize deeply in one programming language, get really, really good at it. That's valuable. But here's what a wealthy person does. They learn 3 or 4 languages at a basic level. They understand cloud infrastructure. They know a bit about design. They can talk to marketers. Are they the best at any single thing? No. But when an opportunity appears that requires combining multiple skills, they're the only one who can do it. They've purchased optionality. And here's the thing about optionality. The value is impossible to calculate in advance. You don't know which option you'll need. You don't know when you'll need it, but when the moment comes, having options is the difference between seizing opportunity and watching it pass by. The psychology here is about abundance versus scarcity thinking. Scarcity thinking says only spend money on exactly what you need right now. Squeeze every penny. Abundance thinking says spend money to create more possibilities. The returns come from unexpected places. Most people are so focused on optimizing the present that they accidentally close off the future. Now, here's what nobody wants to admit. This entire framework requires having money to spend in the first place. And that feels unfair, because it is. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, you can invest in a course that might pay off in 2 years. You need food now, you need rent now. So let me be really clear about something. These principles aren't about becoming wealthy, they're about thinking wealthy. And here's the interesting part. You can start applying these frameworks with tiny amounts of money. Can't afford a $1,500 camera? Start with a $200 used one and learn the skill. Can't attend a $3,000 conference? Find a $50 local meetup in your industry. Can't hire a full-time assistant? Use a $20 per month automation tool. The amounts don't matter, the framework matters, because here's what happens. When you start thinking this way, you naturally start finding money to invest in these things. You stop buying stuff that doesn't multiply your capabilities. You stop spending on things that don't create options, and slowly you start to accumulate advantages. It's not dramatic. It's not overnight, but it compounds. The person who invests $200 per month in skill development for 5 years has spent $12,000. But they've accumulated expertise worth hundreds of thousands in earning potential. The person who spends that same $200 per month on things that depreciate has nothing to show for it. Same money, different trajectory. And here's the really interesting part. Once you start thinking this way, you can't stop. Every purchase becomes a decision point. Is this creating leverage? Is this purchasing proximity? Is this adding to my skills? Or is this just money leaving my pocket forever? Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus is a graphic designer, makes about $60,000 per year. Not bad, but he wants more. He needs a new laptop, his old one is dying, he's got about $3,000 saved up. He looks at the new MacBook Pro, $3,500, way over his budget. So he buys a decent Windows laptop for $1,200, saves the rest, feels responsible. Makes sense, right? But here's what Marcus doesn't realize. That MacBook would have let him run the professional design software his higher-paying clients require. It would have signaled to clients that he's serious, that he's professional. It would have lasted 6 years instead of 3. But more importantly, Marcus is thinking about the purchase wrong. He's thinking, can I afford $3,500? He should be thinking, what will this laptop enable me to earn over the next 6 years? 6 months later, Marcus loses a potential client. They need someone who can work in the Adobe Creative Suite. His laptop can't handle it smoothly. That client would have been worth $15,000 per year. Marcus saved $2,300, but it cost him $90,000 over 6 years. Now, here's the thing. Marcus didn't make a stupid decision. He made a logical decision based on the wrong framework. He optimized for minimizing expense. He should have optimized for maximizing capability. And this pattern repeats everywhere in his life. He skips the industry conference because it costs $800. But he would have met the art director who could have referred him to his dream clients. He doesn't hire an accountant because he can do his own taxes, but he misses deductions worth thousands and spends 20 hours per year stressed about paperwork. He teaches himself everything from free YouTube videos, but it takes him 3 times longer than if he'd bought a structured course. Marcus works really hard. He's smart, he's talented, but 5 years from now, he's still making about the same amount, maybe $70,000 if he's lucky, because he's been treating every purchase as an expense to minimize. Now, let me tell you about Jennifer. Jennifer is also a graphic designer, also makes about $60,000 per year, also needs a new laptop, but Jennifer thinks about it completely differently. She asks herself, what laptop will let me do the work I want to be doing 3 years from now? She wants to do motion graphics, she wants to work with bigger brands, she wants to create video content. Those things require serious computing power. So she buys the $3,500 MacBook Pro, uses a credit card because she doesn't have enough cash, feels terrified. But here's what she does next. She immediately takes on 2 smaller projects specifically to pay off that laptop in 3 months. Projects she wouldn't have taken otherwise. The laptop is paid off, but more importantly, she's proved to herself that she can generate money when she needs to. Then she invests $800 in a 3-day motion graphics workshop, meets 5 other designers at her level. They start referring work to each other. One of them mentions that their agency is always looking for reliable freelancers. Would Jennifer be interested? That introduction leads to a retainer worth $2,000 per month. Jennifer's been a designer for the same amount of time as Marcus. She's not more talented, she doesn't work harder. But 5 years later, she's making $140,000 per year. The difference wasn't the laptop, the difference was the framework. Every time Jennifer spent money, she asked, "What does this purchase enable?" That laptop enabled her to take on better clients. That workshop enabled her to build a network. That business coach she hired for $150 per month enabled her to raise her rates confidently. She was spending money. But she wasn't losing money. She was deploying capital into herself. Here's what most people don't realize. The difference between Marcus and Jennifer isn't about money management, it's about identity. Marcus sees himself as someone who spends money, so he tries to minimize the damage. Jennifer sees herself as someone who invests in assets, and she happens to be her own best asset. This is the reframe that changes everything. You are not a consumer of products, you are a portfolio of capabilities. Every skill you have is an asset. Every relationship you've built is an asset. Every hour of free time you have is an asset. The question isn't, can I afford this purchase? The question is, does this purchase increase the value of my portfolio? When you buy a course, you're not spending $500. You're adding an asset to your portfolio that generates returns forever. When you hire a coach, you're not spending $200 per month. You're accelerating the appreciation of your capabilities. When you attend a conference, you're not spending $1,000. You're diversifying your network portfolio. It's not actually about turning expenses into investments at all. It's about recognizing that every dollar you spend is either growing your portfolio or depleting it. Wealthy people figured this out early, or someone taught them, and once you see it, every financial decision becomes obvious. Does this grow my portfolio? Yes. Then it's not an expense. Does this just make me feel good temporarily? Then it's probably not the best use of capital. Now, here's the part that's important to understand. This doesn't mean you never enjoy your money. It means you enjoy your money after your portfolio is generating returns. You buy the nice dinner after you've invested in the skills that increased your income. You take the vacation after you've built the systems that run without you. You get the luxury item after you've created the optionality that protects you. The order matters. Most people try to enjoy life now and invest later, when they have more money, when they feel more secure, but that day never comes. Because they never built the foundation. Wealthy people invest first, enjoy second, but they enjoy way more because the foundation is solid. So let's bring this all together. The productivity multiplier: buy things that let you do more valuable work. The network effect purchase: buy proximity to people who create opportunities. The skill stacking purchase: build capabilities that multiply each other. The leverage purchase: buy back your time to focus on high-value activities. The optionality purchase: create flexibility for future opportunities. These aren't spending hacks. They're not tricks to justify buying stuff you want. They're a completely different operating system for how you relate to money. And here's the thing, you probably won't nail this immediately. You'll make mistakes. You'll invest in things that don't pan out. That's okay. That's part of the process. The people who succeed don't have perfect judgment. They have a framework that gets better with practice. Every wealthy person I've studied has some version of this framework. The details differ, but the core principle is always the same. They stopped seeing purchases as money leaving their pocket. They started seeing purchases as capital allocation decisions. And once you make that shift, everything changes. The question isn't whether you can afford to think this way. The question is whether you can afford not to.